The world was bathed in an eerie, crimson glow as the infinite Tsukuyomi's genjutsu stretched across the sky, its twisted light ensnaring countless souls in an endless dream. Naruto Uzumaki stood atop the ruins of a shattered battlefield, his breath ragged, his cerulean eyes burning with defiance. The air crackled with residual chakra, the aftermath of a war that had left the world teetering on the edge of oblivion. But the fight wasn't over, not yet. Shadows slithered across the ground, whispering in voices that chilled the blood, their forms shifting like liquid darkness. These weren't ordinary foes, they were manifestations of the Tsukuyomi's will, sentient nightmares given flesh, and they had one purpose: to break the last free shinobi standing. Naruto clenched his fists, his orange jacket flaring as golden chakra erupted around him, the nine tails power surging through his veins. The Kyuubi's cloak enveloped him, tails of energy lashing behind him like living flames. He could feel Kurama's growl reverberating in his mind, a reminder of the beast's fury matching his own. These things aren't just illusions, Kurama snarled. They're feeding off the trapped souls, the more they consume, the stronger they get. Naruto gritted his teeth. He had to end this fast before the shadows grew too powerful to stop. The first shadow lunged, its form elongating into a jagged spear aimed straight for his heart. Naruto twisted midair, his reflexes honed by years of battle, and countered with a spinning kick infused with wind chakra. The force of the blow cleaved the shadow in two, but the halves merely reformed, laughing in distorted echoes. "You can't kill what's already dead," the shadows taunted, their voices overlapping like a dissonant choir. Naruto's eyes narrowed. If brute force wasn't enough, he'd have to outthink them. He formed a series of hand seals faster than the eye could follow, his chakra flaring. Wind style, Rasen Shuriken. The spiraling sphere of razor-sharp wind erupted from his palm, hurtling toward the mass of shadows. The attack detonated in a cataclysmic explosion, shredding the darkness into ribbons. For a moment, it seemed to work, until the fragments writhed and merged again, larger than before. The shadows' laughter grew louder, their forms now towering over him, their eyes gleaming with malevolent intelligence. "You only make us stronger, child of prophecy," they hissed. Naruto's mind raced. If they fed on chakra, then maybe. He reached deep within, tapping into the sage mode he had mastered long ago. His eyes shifted, pupils becoming elongated, his senses sharpening to supernatural levels. Nature energy surged around him, blending with the Kyuubi's power. The shadows hesitated, this was different. Naruto didn't give them time to adapt. He vanished in a blur, reappearing behind the largest shadow with a fist crackling with sage-enhanced chakra. Lava style, Rasengan. The molten sphere slammed into the shadow's back, searing through its essence with a sizzling hiss. This time, the creature shrieked, its form dissolving into smoke. But the victory was short-lived. More shadows surged from the ground, their numbers endless. Naruto panted, sweat dripping from his brow. He couldn't keep this up forever. Somewhere in this nightmare, the real enemy was pulling the strings, the one who had cast the infinite Tsukuyomi. He had to find them, but first, he had to survive. The shadows lunged as one, a tidal wave of darkness. Naruto roared, his chakra exploding outward in a golden shockwave. "Kurama, let's go all out." The Kyuubi's laughter filled his mind. About time. In an instant, his form swelled, the chakra cloak expanding into the full manifestation of the nine tails. The colossal fox snarled, its tails lashing as it stood defiant against the encroaching void. The battle had only just begun. The air crackled with energy as Naruto stood amidst the shifting illusions of the infinite Tsukuyomi, his muscles coiled tight, his breath steady. Around him, the shadows whispered, their voices slithering into his mind like venom. They weren't just illusions, they were alive, taunting, feeding on his doubts. But he clenched his fists, feeling the familiar surge of chakra burning through his veins. He wouldn't fall here. Not when the fate of the world hung in the balance. A shadow lunged, its form twisting into a grotesque mimicry of Sasuke, blackened blades flashing. Naruto barely dodged, the edge grazing his shoulder as he spun, countering with a Rasengan that erupted in a burst of blue light. The shadow shattered, only to reform instantly, its laughter echoing. "You can't win," it hissed. "We are your fears, your regrets. You'll drown in them." Naruto gritted his teeth. He'd faced his demons before, but this was different. The shadows weren't just reflections, they were evolving, learning his moves, predicting his strikes. He needed to adapt. Fast. Channeling Kurama's chakra, his body flared with orange energy, tails of chakra lashing behind him. He vanished in a blur, appearing above the shadow Sasuke, driving a knee into its chest. The impact sent it crashing into the ground, but before he could finish it, another shadow, This one, shaped like Madara, slammed a fist into his ribs, sending him skidding back. Pain flared, but Naruto grinned. Nice shot. But you're gonna have to hit harder than that. He wiped blood from his lip, his eyes narrowing. The shadows were strong, but they had one weakness: they relied on his memories, his past battles. They didn't know what he'd become. With a roar, he unleashed a barrage of shadow clones, each one weaving hand signs in perfect sync. The air trembled as a massive Rasen shuriken formed, its screeching whirlwind tearing through the illusions. The shadows screamed as they were shredded, their forms dissolving into smoke. But the victory was short-lived. The ground beneath him writhed, tendrils of darkness surging up to ensnare him. A monstrous figure emerged, a fusion of every foe he'd ever faced, its eyes glowing with malice. "You fight well," it rumbled, "but this is a dream. And dreams can be rewritten." With a snap of its fingers, the landscape twisted, the sky bleeding crimson as gravity inverted. Naruto gasped as he was hurled upward, then sideways, disoriented. The shadow loomed, its fist rearing back for a crushing blow. Time seemed to slow. Naruto's mind raced. He couldn't outpower this, not yet. But he could outthink it. Remembering Jiraiya's teachings, he forced his chakra to stabilize, anchoring himself mid-air. At the last second, he twisted, letting the shadows strike graze him as he channeled Sage Mode. His senses sharpened, the natural energy flooding his body. Now he could see it, the faint pulse of chakra at the shadow's core, its weak point. With a burst of speed, he closed the distance, his fist glowing with a Rasengan infused with Senjutsu. The shadow's eyes widened, it hadn't expected this. The impact was catastrophic, the energy detonating in a shockwave that shattered the false sky. The shadow howled, its form unraveling, but Naruto didn't let up. He pushed forward, his body burning with effort, every cell screaming in protest. This was it. His limit, and he was tearing right through it. Just as the shadow dissolved, the world trembled. A voice, deep and ancient, echoed through the void. "Impressive. But this is only the beginning." The darkness convulsed, reforming into something even more terrifying, a towering figure with 6 glowing eyes, its presence suffocating. Naruto's breath hitched. This wasn't just a shadow anymore. This was the Tsukuyomi's heart. The final battle had arrived. The air crackled with energy as Naruto stood at the center of the infinite Tsukuyomi's twisted dreamscape, his breath ragged, his orange jumpsuit torn and singed from countless clashes. The shadows around him whispered, their voices a chorus of doubt and despair, mocking his every step. But he clenched his fists, his blue eyes burning with defiance. "I won't let you win," he growled, his voice cutting through the eerie silence. The shadows coalesced into monstrous forms, their jagged limbs stretching toward him like living nightmares. Sasuke appeared beside him in a flash of violet chakra, his Sharingan spinning wildly. "They're feeding off our fear," he muttered, his voice strained. "If we hesitate, they'll consume us." Naruto nodded, knowing this was their last stand. The two warriors lunged forward, a whirlwind of fists and blades, their movements a blur of desperation and resolve. Naruto's Rasengan collided with a shadowy beast, the force of the impact sending shockwaves through the illusionary world. Sasuke's Chidori pierced through another, the lightning screeching as it tore the darkness apart. But for every shadow they destroyed, 2 more rose in its place. The shadows taunted them, their voices echoing memories of pain, Naruto's loneliness as a child, Sasuke's vengeance, the weight of their failures. Naruto's vision blurred for a moment as doubt crept in. What if they couldn't win? What if this was the end? But then he felt it, the warmth of his friends, their bonds pulsing in his heart. He wasn't alone. Never again. With a roar, golden chakra erupted around him, his 9 tails cloak blazing like a sun in the abyss. Sasuke smirked, his Rinnegan flaring to life. "About time," he said, and together, they unleashed their ultimate techniques. Naruto's Baijuu bomb condensed in his palm, a sphere of raw power, while Sasuke's Susanoo wrapped around it, amplifying its destructive force. The shadows shrieked as the combined attack tore through them, the sheer brilliance of their will shattering the illusion's foundation. The infinite Tsukuyomi trembled, cracks spreading across the false sky like broken glass. But the shadows weren't done yet. From the depths of the crumbling world, a colossal figure emerged, a twisted reflection of Kaguya, her eyes hollow, her voice a cacophony of every voice they'd ever loved and lost. Naruto's heart pounded. This was it, the final test. He glanced at Sasuke, who met his gaze with a nod. No words were needed. They charged, their movements synchronized as if they shared one mind. Naruto weaved through the shadows, his clones diverting attacks while Sasuke teleported in and out of space, his sword flashing. The battle was a storm of light and darkness, each strike carrying the weight of their past, their regrets, their hopes. Then, in a split second, Naruto saw an opening. He hurled himself forward, his fist glowing with the last of his chakra. The shadow Kaguya lashed out, her tendrils piercing his side, but he gritted his teeth and pushed through. For everyone, he shouted as his fist connected, the impact resonating like a thunderclap. Sasuke was there in an instant, his blade slicing through the shadow's core. A deafening silence followed as the darkness splintered, dissolving into nothingness. The infinite Tsukuyomi shattered, the dream collapsing into reality. Naruto and Sasuke fell to their knees, exhausted but victorious. Around them, the world slowly returned to normal, the sky brightened, the people trapped in the genjutsu blinked awake, confused but free. Naruto grinned weakly, his body aching, but his spirit unbroken. Sasuke exhaled, his usual stoicism softened by relief. "We did it," Naruto said, his voice hoarse. The aftermath was quiet but profound. The villages, once divided by fear and war, now stood united, their shared ordeal forging new bonds. Naruto and Sasuke, once rivals, now bore the scars of battle side by side, their friendship unshakable. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it felt full of hope. As the sun rose over the horizon, Naruto chuckled, wiping blood from his lip. "Man, that was close." Sasuke rolled his eyes but didn't argue. They had faced the impossible and won. And that was enough.